Hi, everybody. I'm Marty Dunn.
Hi, and I'm Dave Lynn, and I'm very pleased to be here with Marty back at Morrison Foerster. I recently rejoined the firm, and it was very much like when Nigel Tufnell rejoined David St. Hubbins and Spinal Tap.
Very, very similar.
We're putting the band back
We're
together.
putting it together and going on the road. It's kind of a Guns N' Roses Eagles situation. So we're going to be traveling around. Dave's going to tell you about it.
Yeah, please come see us this fall. We're going to be touring the country, coming to a city near you. We start off in Las Vegas at the Society for Corporate Governance Western Regional Conference, and then we're going to move on to San Diego, where we're going to be at the Proxy Disclosure Conference and the 15th Annual Executive Compensation Conference. You can find details on that at thecorporatecouncil.net. We're going to then go to Milwaukee, where we'll be at the Society for Corporate Governance Conference there in October. And then we're going to round things out in New York at the Practicing Law Institute's Annual Institute on Securities Regulation in November.
And we thought we'd give you a little overview about what we're going to talk about on the road, so kind of get you interested in showing up. The first point is some topics on shareholder proposals. Basically, the ordinary business exclusion. It appears that the staff is going to come out with a staff legal bulletin explaining what kind of analysis they want of the board's consideration, so that I think will be good. The staff is going to continue, I believe, on I-9, allowing you to get ratification and get an exclusion. And then another interesting thing, I think we're going to see a lot of micromanagement letters under I-7 after last year, with the basic notion is if they're directing a specific outcome, you can make an I-7 argument. The other thing that I think is going to be interesting this year is there are a couple of new staff interps on notice of exempt solicitations. And I think the staff's making clear you can voluntarily do that is going to lead to a lot more of them and a lot of issues for companies as to how to respond and how to handle them. So I think we've got some good issues going on about proxy for this year. And there's also some new stuff for your 10K.
That's right. Yeah, the SEC came out with some rules very recently that basically streamlined disclosure requirements in Regulation SK and Regulation SX. This was all coming out of the directives in the FAST Act that Congress had passed a few years back. And essentially what the SEC's done here is sort of trim the hedges a little bit in terms of disclosures that were overlapping or unnecessary or outdated at this point. The things to keep in mind for the upcoming 10K season are that, first off, there have been some disclosures historically around where you can find the information that you file with the SEC. For many, many years, it said that you can go to the public reference room at the SEC to view the information, but there's this thing called the internet now that where you can find all of your reports on EDGAR. The other area where they've made a change is to basically say that you don't have to include disclosure of stock prices going back 2 years, which obviously on the internet you can find stock prices very easily. So they recognized that that disclosure was no longer relevant. And then the next step was they basically said that companies will now have to actually disclose information about what their website address is, whereas previously it was only encouraged in the SEC rules. But I don't think that would have any change at all because
Most
people
folks
are
already
already disclosing it. In the business section, in your registration statement or your periodic report, they did make a few changes there. The information that's broken down by segment will no longer have to be disclosed. You also won't have to disclose information about research and development activities because that's already covered by gap disclosure, which I think will be helpful as a way to sort of pare back that disclosure for certain companies where research and development makes a difference in their industry. And then also the disclosure about the geographic distribution of revenues is no longer going to be required, again, because of overlap with what's already required from the accounting perspective. In the MD&A section, they addressed the fact of whether you'd have to talk about the impact of seasonality in interim period reports, and that will no longer be necessary, which is a minor change, but they kept in place the seasonality requirement that you have in the business section. And then last but not least, the disclosure of ratio of earnings to fixed charges, which has been a staple of debt and preferred stock offerings for many years, and also in periodic reports, has gone the way of the dinosaur. And so when these rules go effective late in September, that disclosure will no longer be required. And this is just sort of a latest in a series of actions the Commission has taken to try to improve the effectiveness of disclosure. I think that process is going to continue. There are a number of proposing releases and solicitations of comments and concept releases out there that they're going to be following up on in the coming months.
So that's what we're going to be talking about on the road. We look forward to seeing you all there.